Can I welcome you to Bishop Challoner? We are a Catholic school at the heart of Tower Hamlets, and I'm really proud and privileged to be able to welcome speakers for school to our school today. The debate and the panel will be chaired by Robert Peston, and I am privileged to be able to hand over to him now.
Well, can I just say what a treat it is to be here, and just got a sort of couple of opening remarks I wanted to make. The first thing was to say thank you to you. Speakers for Schools is a charity that brings people we regard as inspirational to give free talks in state schools, but we can't do that unless we're made welcome, and I have to say you've given us a fantastic welcome today, so thanks to all of you and thanks to your teachers for that. The other thing I'd like to say is I'm amazingly jealous of all of you. I went to a London Comprehensive quite a long time ago, and just wandering through and seeing the resources you've got here, what looked to me to be fantastic buildings, with the notion that you've got this sort of this great bank of seats in your hall. If this had happened in my school in the 70s, we'd have been sitting on the floor. As I say, I'm tremendously jealous of all of you, and I know that you are making the most of the fantastic facilities and resources you've got here. Now we're going to start by sharing with you some research we did of around 1,000 students like yourselves and a few hundred teachers, because we wanted to get an idea of what you think the challenges you face may be, particularly when it comes to the jobs you might want to do later, careers. So, and just to sort of put that into context, it says up there that you're a unique generation. Actually, all generations are different from the previous ones. You're all unique, you're all special. But there is a particular challenge which I'm afraid confronts you, and I have to tell you it's probably all our fault. The economy has been in a bit of a mess over the last few years, as you probably know, and it's my generation that got it into that mess. Unfortunately, you are the people who are now, in a sense, having to confront an economy which is not growing as fast as it was. We're out of a really bad dip, a really bad contraction in the amount of income this economy generates, but very few people believe we're going to get back to boom times. So that's not a great backdrop, but it is a backdrop nonetheless in which all of you can succeed if you know where you're going and you apply yourselves. So, what do you think about what awaits you out there? Well, in terms of the people we surveyed, 69% of the young people we've talked to say that they're anxious about what lies out there. So I'd be interested to know if you feel a bit anxious about the next 5, 10, 20 years. But, and not surprisingly, because you're all bright and you've seen what's going on in the economy and in Britain, you're not confident. The majority of you are not confident of getting a job. However, and this is where I took enormous heart, 64% describe themselves as ambitious and determined. I'm not sure whether at your age I would have described myself as ambitious and determined. I don't know. It's a good thing to be though. And 83% believe if you work hard, you can achieve what you want in life. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that we all have the opportunity to make something really positive of our lives if we're determined and we apply ourselves. I don't know whether this is of any sort of scientific interest, as it were. Apparently, a majority of you think that what you'll be earning at the age of 30 is £40,000 and £40,500. It seems sort of slightly curiously precise, that, but there we go. Now, university. I'll bet most of you think you want to go to university. Sort of hope you do. 70% of the people we talked to thought that's what they wanted to do. But you're realists. It's important to be realistic in life. 70% of you know that simply having a degree doesn't guarantee that you'll get the job you want. It's about more than just the qualification on paper, isn't it? And we'll talk a bit about that as well. But a fifth of you do firmly believe that having a degree is pretty essential to being successful. And again, I think it'd be interesting to see what the panel thinks of that, whether they think that having a degree is absolutely essential to getting on in the world. We're almost at the end. 54% of you believe that you will have to work harder than your parents did and for less money. Okay, it's more than half of you. I thought that was a really striking result. Because I have to be honest with you, when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, I broadly took it for granted that I would do at least as well, possibly a bit better than my parents. Don't know if it's really turned out that way, but that's what I thought. We were optimists. We thought that the world was getting better for all of us. So it's quite striking that you think, probably correctly, that the world has got a bit tougher. A third of you believe that connections help in helping you in getting what you want. And 43% of you say, and this of course is a reflection of what we were talking about earlier, the importance of confidence and ambition. 43% of you say that a lack of confidence is a barrier to achieving what you want, getting the careers getting into the careers or the vocation that where you want to end up. That's why, actually, a big part of what Speakers for Schools tries to do is try and help you boost your confidence, because we think you will achieve hugely more, the more ambitious, the more confident you feel about the world. So if this clicker will work, it does. That is a sort of short overview of the research. And now I'm going to throw it over to you with a few questions from our amazingly distinguished panel. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we've got here. On my right is an old friend of mine, Charles Dunstone. Now, he is one of the most successful creators of businesses of my generation. He's created two really important and substantial companies, Carphone Warehouse, which you'll have come across, which is a pioneer in selling mobile phones, and TalkTalk, which is a big company in broadband and in telecommunications in general, and increasingly now in entertainment. So if you're interested in particular about how companies work and how you set up a successful company, he's your man. Some of you, I imagine, will know a bit more about Jamal Edwards than you do about Charles Dunstone. Am I right? Do you know who Jamal is? Yeah. Jamal is another fantastic business creator. All right? A bit younger than us, only 23, but he has created a pioneering digital business with, as you know, all these films that he's made on his own YouTube platform, SBTV, and you've had, what, 150 million views, is that right? 190 million. Sorry, I did him a disservice. It's 190. It's an extraordinary achievement for a young man. And so I think we'll hear a little bit from Jamal about how he did that and what the lessons are for all of you. And on my right, another amazingly impressive person from the world of business, Helena Morrissey. She runs a company called Newton, and the thing about Newton is it manages billions and billions and billions of pounds of other people's money. And she's also, which I think is very impressive, a leading campaigner to get more women at the top of businesses. And she's been very influential in that respect. And the other thing, which I don't think is an irrelevant, so she'll forgive me for saying this, is she combines this with having more children than I can count and being a very hard-working, successful mother. And I think, that thing about balancing family and work is a really hard thing. And as I say, another reason I'm desperately impressed with Helena is how she pulls all of that off. Now, we were also lucky enough to have two of your peers, two of your fellow students with us. Phoebe Frendo, who's the head girl of this bit of the Bishop Challoner Federation, and Adeolu Ashoba, who's the head boy of the other bit, as it were. And I've looked at their aspirations and what they've achieved. And again, as I'm sure you know, and I hope you don't tease them afterwards, they seem to be fantastically impressive young people who I hope will contribute to our conversation today. So thank you very much, and we'll now throw it over to questions. And as I sit down, could I ask Hannah Redfern to stand up? Because I think, Hannah, you've got the first question for us.
What do you think is the #1 obstacle facing young people today?
So I'm going to ask, actually, all the panel just to sort of kick us off in that way. And Helena, perhaps you could go first.
Sure. Well, actually, I do think the point that came up in the survey about confidence is the biggest obstacle that I see. I feel that there is a lot of fear and worry about what happens next. And that I see particularly, I'm not going to go on about this point, but with girls, I see that there's an anxiety about how, the next stage in their lives, or whether they will be able to combine a career and family life. That might not be your immediate concern, but I see that there's just anxiety of not being able to quite fulfill the potential. And I do think, Robert, you mentioned it in your introduction, that can hold you back. I think we are actually all capable of achieving a lot more. We only use probably a fraction of our abilities in most of our daily lives.
You are?
Yeah, I agree with Helena. It's all about believing in yourself and self-belief. A lot of people, when I was younger, when I used to go to school, they used to say to me, "Oh, you can't do this and you can't do that," and their aspirations were quite low, so it made everyone think you're not going to be able to do something. And obviously, when I first started SBTV, when I came into school and I had my camera, everyone was like, "What is that? You don't know how to film, it's like cheap camera." But I believed in myself, and I think a lot of young people kind of need to build their self-belief up to kind of go forward with their dreams, I guess.
Charles?
Yeah, I think that the trouble is that if you listen to all that's being talked about in the media and the world, it's very easy to get yourself in a position where you think it's very tough, it's going to be very hard, the economy is going to be very difficult. I think what I've always done is to think about what are the things that I can actually do something about. I can't change the whole environment about me, but what can I do? How can I look positively out of everything as to how does it create an opportunity? And I wish that there was more good messages and more things that will give people confidence. And if you sit here, we live in the most unbelievable city, London. So if you grow up in London, you have the most incredible opportunities. It's becoming the capital of the world. There's so much innovation, so much wealth in this city. That's an amazing opportunity. We're at a time when traditional businesses are being turned on their head by technology. So even if I think back to when I started Carphone Wass, it was quite a traditional world. Now, technology is meaning that businesses that have been around for years and years just are going to disappear, and technology is going to take their place. For new people coming through that understand technology and have got the imagination to see what technology can do, I think the opportunities are limitless. So I think the most important thing for young people, as Jamal was saying, is believe in yourself and be excited about the opportunity, and don't become too depressed by all the noise that you hear around you of what's going on.
Phoebe, do you want to chip in?
I think the same thing. Having confidence in yourself is something that not only makes you feel good about yourself, makes you feel good about your future. So if you are confident in what you're doing and you're on the right path and you're being as ambitious and determined as you can, then there's nothing that can stop you.
Well, personally, I believe that if your confidence is at the right level and you believe you could do something, you can get anywhere in life. Nothing's really impossible, especially living in somewhere like London.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, is Alexandra Hayes around? Hello.
Would you say it's better to do an apprenticeship or go into higher education overall?
Charles.
I didn't go to university, so I just started working. So I didn't have a formal apprenticeship, but I learned what I was doing by becoming a salesman in a company and selling stuff and trying to do business. So I'm biased that I kind of feel if you don't, I think the worst thing to do is to think, well, I'm going to go to university because that delays making the decision for 3 years, and I don't really know what I want to do. If you're ambitious to get on, then and you've got an idea, I think you should get on and push ahead with it. I think if you're interested, if you are interested in learning more, then university is a great thing. But I think people are a bit preoccupied by the fact that you have to go.
Jamal, do you have a view on this?
Yeah, so I didn't go to uni either. I think it's case by case. I think with certain jobs, it's going to be a nurse or a doctor, or maybe they might have to say you have to go to higher education. But in media, there's a term of like, it's who you know, not what you know. That some people that go to uni for media will come out and not be able to get a job, but someone that didn't go to uni had work experience and apprenticeship in the media, and then they had the experience which they like more. So I think it's more of a case by case. It's more of a doctor or a vet. I think higher education might be the best place, but I didn't go to uni, so I'm in the media, so I was able to go out there, get my experience, and building it up the back of that.
Well, as well, I confess that the number shown in my head is 9. I'll get that out of the way. It's going to come up at some point in the conversation. So I have a pretty good sample size, not 1,000 that you surveyed, and I can see that they're all incredibly different. My eldest son's at university reading Arabic, and my second child, a daughter who's 18, she left school at 17 and she's a singer-songwriter. And it just has to be the individual decision. I think that the survey was very telling and very accurate, that people realise it's not a golden ticket to a job, it doesn't guarantee future success in life, but it is the right path for a lot of people, and it's got to be down to the individual.
I mean, I might just sort of, in a sense, try and sum up that. I mean, my view would be that it's not right for everybody, but it is a fantastic place, quite often to get very useful skills or knowledge, but also try and work out what you want to do in life. And that you're not wasting your if you don't know what you want to do, you're definitely not wasting your time going to university. And I think that's quite important. And many of us, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I left school. And I was fantastically grateful to have a few years to try and work out that actually where I wanted to end up was the media. But if I'd been forced to make that decision at 18 or 19, I almost certainly would have made the wrong choice. And so don't underestimate just having a little bit more time to think through where you want to end up can be pretty useful. And that qualification ain't going to do you any harm.
There's a gap year as well.
Yeah.
When you want to do it, because my mate took a gap year and then decided in that gap year he managed to find a job, and then my other mate, he took a gap year and managed to find out what he actually wanted to do in university as well. So it's always a good look as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the key thing you agree with is don't rush into something just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Is Nazir around? Right, Nazir is now.
Did any of the panel find work experience was actually helpful in their future careers?
In my day, we didn't have work experience. Is there anybody here? Tell us about.
So at first, when I was filming, my parents didn't have a lot of money to buy me tapes. So I had to get, my mum literally walked me into Top Man in Eden and said, give my son a job. So I've done the first 2 weeks and I managed to get a job. And the main reason why I used that work experience kind of opened me up to like be able to balance a job as well as do SBTV. So I worked there for 4 years. I used that money to buy tapes, and it kind of like also opened my social side, because I had to go out to people that I never met before and ask them for store cards and stuff like that. So I didn't want to speak on that.
But I think it's finished now anyway.
I did it.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Is your mic not working?
Yeah, so I worked in Top Man for about 4 years, trying to balance SBTV as well as that, and then it got to a certain point where it helped me build like my personal character. So work experience for me did help, and I think it's always good to try and get as much work experience as possible.
You on work experience?
Yeah, I have the same generation as you, Robert, so it didn't really exist in my day, but I definitely see it with my children's generation. I think it's very helpful because it can help eliminate things that, you know, going back to Robert's point about taking a bit of time. It's not a problem. Some people have a great passion of what they want to do and they know, but other people need to, you know, test things out. And I found that people, you know, I've given work experience to people who actually decide they don't want to be in fund management or in the city or even work in an office. But that's really important to have learned that through before it's too late, really, before you find yourself sort of locked in and have responsibilities.
I never actually had any proper work experience, but I had like holiday jobs, and I remember I had one of my jobs was working in a printer's, gluing the bits of cardboard together that Hallmark gift tape got wrapped around, and it was actually and I did a couple of other sort of equally dull things, and it was actually very, very motivating to me, because it did make me realise that if I didn't do something, that's what I was going to end up doing, and it was unbelievably tedious thing to have to do over and over and over again. And then I went on holiday with a group of friends when I was about 17 or something. We went around the Greek islands. We had no money at all. We were sort of sleeping on the beach and stuff, and it was so miserable and awful that for the last 2 days, I had a credit card and I just checked into a hotel. I just couldn't bear being on the beach another night. And that's the other really salutary lesson that I took, that said, right, Charles, you have to get off your bum and work and do something, because you don't want to glue tape together and you don't want to sleep on beaches. And that, I think, was part of the thing that gave me some ambition to really push myself.
Have you benefited from work experience, either of you two?
Yeah, I think I have. I think going to work experience and doing work experience it shows you the real world, what you will be doing and how you will work in the real world, because school's not always an accurate reflection of that. So going to work and being in on time and leaving later and having certain things to do at certain times shows you what you do want to do, as Helena said, what you do want to do and what you don't want to do.
Well, for my work experience, I went to Waitrose, and just like Charles, it made me want to work harder, because like I didn't really want to end up like stacking stores and things like that. I wanted to be better than that. So like that's just going to be my inspiration. I'm always going to look back at my work experience and remember that's not where I want to be, so I'm going to keep trying harder.
So one of the great things about the technological world we inhabit is we're able to get this meeting out to other schools as well over the internet, and I got a question in from Rochelle Academy. Unfortunately, the name of the person who sent the question is not here, but I'm going to ask it. In the currently overcrowded job market, what do young people need to do, and you're an employer, so you should be able to answer this, what do young people need to do to get their CVs and applications noticed?
Well, it's going to sound very trite, but you actually do have to say something that will resonate with employers. I think we see a lot of CVs which look like somebody's been sort of, you know, schooled in how to write a CV, and it's very professional, but it doesn't really come from the heart. And I think when people, particularly towards the end, where you're talking about your interests and what you're looking to do, and anything that really has motivated you up until this point, I'm looking for a spark. I'm looking for something a little bit, not controversial necessarily, but that really reflects what they're about. So I don't think people should just, get all their, advisors, teachers, parents, often have very much your interests at heart, but it's got ultimately to be about you, and that personality has really got to come through from the CV. But don't be afraid as well if you don't have to kind of polish it up to the point. Sometimes the raw is, it's the diamond in the rough that you're looking for, and I just love seeing somebody who's written it really clearly from their heart and really want the job.
Do you get any applications from people?
Yeah, I get quite a lot.
What do you look for?
I look for people that are clear, they're themselves, and I think like know the company as well, so know what you're basically applying for. Like when someone says to me, oh yeah, I really like the F64s and I like the A64s and I like the producer's house because I learn about that. I know they're a viewer of the content and I know they're watching it, so that's much more of a sorted candidate for SBTV than someone that doesn't really know the brand. So I think if people are applying for CVs, you should always market and research the company that you're applying to and just be yourself.
No?
Yeah, I think I would echo what the other two said. I think it has to be very succinct. You just have to remember that whoever's looking at it isn't looking at your CV in isolation. It's probably on quite a big pile of CVs, and they're flicking through them. They're probably going through quite quickly, trying to get a short list. They're probably thinking about other things as well. So it's like an advert. Everything that's really good about you that you've got to say just needs to be really clear and near the top. And I always think that if you're doing a CV, it's like trying to make an advert in a newspaper for a product. It's got to jump out and grab people with all the best benefits of the product as easily as possible.
Now, I want to get through as many questions as possible, so some of these I'm not going to put to all the panel members. Is Jessica Fox here? She is. Jessica, what's your question? And actually, if Sean could put his hand up so that the microphone, so we know where the next microphone goes. So, are there two microphones? No, there's only one. Okay, but Sean's down here. Jessica, what's your question?
Did any of you experience failure before becoming successful?
Who wants to volunteer failure? Jamal.
I think with failure, if it's failure, that's when you've completely given up. I think the thing that people make is that the failure kind of is a setback, and you learn from that to make you a stronger person. And I think what people don't get is that if you fail, I think the failure is not in actually trying, but if you try and fail, you'll learn from that. So I've had loads of setbacks where I could have stopped and said, I'm not going to carry on doing SBTV no more. But I looked at that situation, evaluated it, came back, and I changed the way that I kind of ran with the business. So I think failure's a good thing to learn from.
Helena.
Well, I think actually, echoing the point about setbacks rather than abject failure, you have to have them and you have to learn from them, and it makes you resilient. I was passed over for promotion, like the first rung on the ladder at my first employer, and that taught me, did I want to stay there? Was it something about me? I had to kind of work out what it was, and in fact that was a very traditional employer, and I just had my first child, and I realised that the sort of culture wasn't going to work for me. But you have to have those knocks to then, there's no day at the top of anything that you don't encounter difficulties and actual failures. I mean, it's all very mixed bag.
I think it's very simple, is that success is only just having slightly more successes than failures. There's always going to be failures. You just hope it's at least 51% success, 49% failure.
I mean, certainly, and I see a lot of incredibly successful people. The people who seem to be the most successful are those who have encountered big obstacles early, often failed, and then picked themselves up and started again. And it's what you learn from the setbacks that I think everybody would say really matters. Now, Sean, Sean's here.
What advice would you give us as we go into job interviews?
That was advice on job interviews.
I'm sure people give you the normal, you look people in the eye, shake their hands, come across with sort of like your core messages. But again, echoing the points that came up with the CV, you've got to do something that's a bit distinctive, not embarrassing, hopefully, but distinctive, you get remembered for the right reason. I think when people ask you a question, then again, don't think about what's the stock answer and what's going to be the sort of socially acceptable answer. Think about what you really believe. Because the interviewer is going to, again, going back to Charles's point, see probably lots of people, and you want to stand out for all the right reasons. And think a little bit about, you've got to connect with the person. That's the other thing. It's a two-way conversation. So obviously come up with some questions that you think really you want to know the answers to, but show your interest.
Any particular words of wisdom here?
I'd just say make sure that you know about the business that they're interviewing you about, because it's like Jamal was saying with a CV, it's so much more impressive if you talk to someone and they've got a point of view about what you're doing and they know, than if you feel that they're meeting loads and loads of people and they're just trying to get a job, any job, and they're not really enthusiastic about being part of your organisation.
I might press on actually. Zahir Ahmed. It's just along the row here.
How much does your background have to do with how successful you are?
The nice easy one. Charles, you can start.
I don't think it does, and I think going back to what I was saying earlier is that the technology is liberating the world so much that people can come from anywhere. And I think if you look at the most extraordinary businesses that have been created in the world in the last, I don't know, 20 years, the Amazons, the Googles, these types of organisations, they didn't come from the real American establishment. They came from people that had been reasonably recent immigrants to America. They had a great idea and they made it happen. And I think the world is and the same in this country. I think it's as open as it has ever been. Not to say it couldn't be more open, but I think it's down to your ambition. It's not to do with your background.
Anybody else want to chip in?
I think you said it all. I think the thing is not to let anything hold you back. And I went to a comprehensive school, and then my sons, are at Eton, and it's kind of like it's not really about where you were at school or what you. And this is obviously a very aspirational school, but it's more about the confluence of factors and experiences that makes you who you are, and just your social background or where you live or something is just a piece of that. But I agree with Charles that we're living in a world where it's much less hierarchical. And it's much more about, influencing people through things like Twitter and other social media as well. But if you have a great view, you can get hurt.
Yeah, basically, Charles and Raymond basically answered the question. Yeah.
I mean, I think what I would say, which I think is just to summarise what they're saying, which is, it would be naive to say that background doesn't count for anything. There are people who have huge advantages. We can't, but you mustn't get bitter about that if you don't have those advantages, and you've got to recognise that you can make a huge amount with the skills and talents that we all have. And certainly the people I've always been most impressed with, the people who, in my experience, have gone furthest, have tended to be the people who've had some of the greater handicaps early in life. So you can achieve an enormous amount, whatever your background. I thought the technology had stopped working. We were talking about how great... Well, it sort of has stopped working. They're just taking away the question I was going to ask. Perhaps they could put it back. Are they going to put it back? No, they're not. So here's another question, which is, this is from the Blessed Edward Old Corn Catholic College, which is, what 5 points would you classify as the most important when achieving success? And if I could ask the people backstage to take me back to the last question so that I can ask it in a minute, that would also be helpful. So what 5 points do you think, you don't have to be 5, would you classify as the most important for achieving success? If you can only come up with 2 or 3, don't worry about it.
For me, I think it's about attitude, and it's just about seeing the opportunity in everything that exists. I remember when I was, I think I was on a sales course or something years and years ago, and someone told this story about a shoe company in England, and they sent this person off to some faraway land to say, we need to find more markets to sell shoes. We can't sell them. The market's full in the UK. And he got there and he sent a message back and he said, I'm coming home, waste of time. No one here wears shoes. And they sent another guy 2 years later. He gets there, sent the message back, send loads of shoes. This is unbelievable. No one here wears shoes. And it's just the point of view that you take to any situation is there an opportunity within it? Is there an opportunity out of something that's changing, something that's difficult? And it's just your attitude to see the potential in any situation, and that is, as far as I've learned, that's the absolute key to success, and that you'll have a plan and you'll have an idea, but along the way you have to be opportunistic and keep adapting and keep being very positive.
I mean, I think what I might do, because I think we have sort of covered that off in some of what we said, I might just ask the other question has now come back, which I think is a jolly interesting one, which is, again from the same school, Blessed Edward Alcorn, what is your biggest regret in your career?
Oh, wow. Well, okay for time now.
Have you got a regret, Jamal? Well, anything?
Well, I think only one.
I say I never regret anything except maybe the person I am today. So if I regret something, then I wouldn't have learnt from it, or I wouldn't have been doing something which I regretted, which like loops around. So I've always said like I don't regret anything.
Well, I think it's a similar point, but I'd say the only regrets really have been when I didn't seize the moment. You know, when going back to Charles's, attitude is the key thing. There are always going to be people who come up with reasons not to do something or why it won't work, or trying to slightly pull you back. I mean, that's just sadly the nature of life. But when sometimes I let that get to me and held back from doing something that I knew, in my heart was the right thing to do, then that's the sort of, and those sorts of regrets do occur a lot because we're all human beings and we all get sort of slightly the wind knocked out of our sails. But there are all the things that have worked have been when I've sort of said, with taking people's opinion into account, no, actually, what we're going to try to achieve is so much bigger than all those reasons not to go for it.
Do you have any regrets?
Well, I think you have regrets, but they change over time. So there've been times when we've done things, and particularly when we launched the broadband business, it was an absolute unmitigated disaster, and I felt really very low about it. I had massive regrets about lots of things that happened out of it, and then when I look back now, I sort of realised that if we hadn't done that and we hadn't just thrown ourselves into it very naively, we'd never actually have built the business that we have today, and that in the end the pain was probably worth it, because it wouldn't exist unless we'd been through that. So I also think that they're not things that you think you regret. In time, you look back and you get a different perspective on them.
Brilliant, thank you. If we could hear from Jennifer Shahi, please, who I think Jennifer's got a question particularly, which is specifically for Helena.
Will it always be hard for women to succeed in business and in the boardroom?
I would say no. I sort of have to be an optimist about this whole issue. I actually think we're at a moment now where we've seen huge progress, even in the very recent past, the last 3 years, is being moved from being a kind of women's special interest issue to actually businesses wanting to, not just retain a talent, male or female, but also then, make sure that women get promoted and fulfill their potential, ultimately perhaps in the boardroom or in executive roles. And so I think, it's been a long, I've been in business 25 years, and there was sort of overt discrimination at the beginning, and that's all changed. I think now we're at a kind of more subtle, juncture in the whole thing, and I think we can't ignore the fact that obviously women have to have children, and sometimes the way society is, are expected to be the ones that would be looking after the children, but there's no sort of, certainty about that being the way of the future. So I think at the moment now companies are being a bit more subtle about things like how do men and women respond differently to opportunities, how do we, historically if a woman wasn't succeeding you'd send them off on a training course, but the training course was more around what works for the men. So I feel it's really great to be a girl now, and actually that you can just, you can go as far as you want to go. You just have to be a little bit conscious at a certain point that if you want to have children, you've got to work out a practical way of looking after them and bringing them up, and it might not all fall to you in the next generation anyway.
And it's worth pointing out that probably the most powerful person in the global economy looks set to be a woman, the next chair of the US Central Bank, the Federal Reserve. So that's an amazing thing. If we could hear now from Bobby Jo Allen, please.
15?
Now, I'm actually going to start by asking you whether you know what you want to do.
I don't know at all, but I know that I will know soon. If I keep my options open and I continue to work hard, then I can decide what I want to do when the time's right. Rushing into something and making the wrong decision, and as everyone said, having regrets is not something that I want to do. So at the minute, I'm waiting until I know what I want to do, and then I can set that goal for myself when it comes.
And Adio, do you know what you want to do?
Well, personally, I actually want to go into something to do with biology and physics. But my options are still very open. Like, I don't mind converting to anything. Just as long as I get the right results, I can do anything in life.
Now, I sort of assumed, Jamal, since you started filming at 15, that you sort of did know what you wanted to do then, did you?
Yeah, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I was a MC before that. I did a bit of acting, and I was also like kind of done a little bit of design work. So I think I tried out all of those things, which is good to try things out when you're young. Just try everything, and that's why I tried everything. And then when I got the camera and started filming, I was like, yeah, this is something which not a lot of people are doing. And I was 15, so it was quite new. I didn't have to rush into anything. So I'd say like try things out a lot while you're young and see what fits you.
Helena.
I had absolutely no idea. For my A-level subjects then, I did sort of a combination of maths and English and things just to keep my options wide open. And then I read philosophy at university, which obviously isn't necessarily associated with an obvious career at the end of it. But I think the important thing was to be open-minded. And, actually I ended up going to the city because friends of mine said they thought that I'd really enjoy it because it was a mix of sort of mathematical skills and also I like writing and I like, talking to people and things. And so it was on their advice that I applied, and I loved the people that I met in the interviews. So I think you can, again, there are people with a great passion in life and a great talent, and sometimes they seem like the lucky ones because they know what their dream is. But if you don't, it's fine. You just have to keep traveling with it.
I always thought I wanted to be in business and I think have my own business. But I didn't really have the self-confidence to believe that I could. And I think that the thing you have to understand is I think there's very few people that just say, right, I know I'm going to be in business, I know what I'm going to do, and I know I'm going to succeed. So that's what I thought I wanted to do, and I've sort of moved slowly, and I've kept reaching points where I thought I really don't know what I'm doing, I don't know how I'm going to cope with this, and then you get over that little hurdle, and oh wow, okay, I survived that, and you just and you grow. So you mustn't have this thing that you mustn't believe that you need to know all the answers and have the most amazing self-confidence. Having a little bit of humility and self-doubt, I think, is actually probably quite a good thing.
And what I would say is, I know it's really hard, but it's really difficult to be sure what you want to do unless you try things out. And actually, if you try something out and you don't like it, that's not a disaster, because there are other opportunities out there. And I know the climate is tough, but be easy on yourself and try a few things if you're not 100% certain what you want to do, because you will. I was lucky, I did find absolutely the right thing for me. I discovered I love journalism. I tried loads of things before that. So I would say, if at first you find you're doing something that you don't really enjoy, don't despair. You will at some point find absolutely the right thing for you. Adama, please.
How long did it take you to be successful?
So, who wants to start with that? Charles, when did you know that you'd made it? And what was that moment? What was it that happened that made you confident that actually you'd created a business that was going to survive and was going to pay your bills and all that?
I think there's probably two moments. When we very first started the business, we were selling mobile phones, or car phones a lot in those days, and portable phones. No one here will even believe there was such a thing as a car phone, but there was years and years ago. And we used to advertise on Capital Radio and in the Evening Standard. And when we put an advert, particularly on Capital Radio, the advert would go out at, 9:30. The phones would ring, and then they'd go quiet again. And then you'd wait for the next advert or the next thing to happen. And I remember standing our office was a flat, it wasn't an office, but we were sort of squatting in this flat. And I remember one day standing there and the phones were ringing and there wasn't an advert gone out. And I actually thought, wow, this business has actually got some momentum because people are ringing us, not just because they heard an advert, they sort of know of us or someone else told them to ring us or whatever. We sort of had some momentum. And so that's the first time I can remember thinking, wow, this actually might work. And then I remember there's probably like 3 years in thinking, you know, it might not go bankrupt, but because we were always a bit, you know, you're always hand to mouth. Could you pay everyone at the end of the month? Could you do this? And you could actually see the thing had enough momentum in it, and the sort of business model worked. So those were my two moments, really.
Success, I think, is down to what you define as being you're successful. Like, people might look at me and say, "Oh, I hit a certain amount of views on YouTube. You've made it. You can sit back." But to me, I want to kind of go further than that. So I think it's down to the individual what success means to them. I think, yeah.
And I suppose, following on from that, I think it's a very unfinished journey. There's lots more that I want to do, but if in kind of the world's eyes, I suppose when I became chief executive of Newton, which I was 35, then I had 5 children, and it was a surprise. I wasn't expecting to be given that role, and suddenly I realised actually, and it was sort of like, I suppose, a peer vote from my other colleagues that they wanted me to be the chief executive. And so I suppose that made me sort of realise I must have achieved something. And then more recently with the 30% Club, which is this venture to try and get more women on boards in the UK, I guess again there's been a sort of snowballing, it's a gradual thing, long way off it yet, but 19% this week, up from 12 when we started, of women on boards at the biggest companies. And I guess again, realising that something that was a voice, and that people like the Prime Minister were prepared to come and speak at events and that sort of thing, you suddenly realise actually, I'm pleased by that, you know.
Now I'm going to take one from GWHS, and it's really following on from our survey. Our survey said that young people were a bit worried about their prospects. So really this is just to ask all of you whether you think it will be harder for the younger generation to get jobs. What do you think, Helena?
Well, I love the contrast between the collective pessimism and then the individual optimism. And I think that was, I was relieved it was that way around, because ultimately it's all about, you know, the individuals. It's like saying, oh, there's the government or the country or something. There isn't really another body. There isn't really something that ordains what happens to you. Yes, the economy is a bit, you know, has been weak and we still have challenges. But as it's come through, I think, in the discussion today already, that is ultimately you can achieve a lot yourself. You don't really need everything else to be working perfectly. And so, yes, you have to be a bit careful, I think, and think about how you're going to strategize a little bit and get noticed and get that first rung on the ladder. But ultimately, it's down to you, and that's what I was quite relieved that the confidence was still high individually.
Does it feel very tough out there to you, Jamal?
I think it's tough because there's a lot of people that are doing, like, you might think you're doing something, but there's probably 1,000 other people doing it. And that's why I always say, like, chase your dreams, kind of not the competition. Because if you look at other people too much, that will kind of cloud where you want to go. I think it's made it a lot more easier. Like, technology is kind of opening it up. You can find employers on Twitter and Facebook and whatnot and message them, and it kind of breaks down that barrier of people going and handing out letter CVs because the internet's here. So I think it's a lot more easier, but you need to think how you're going to be different from everyone else.
I think the world has probably changed a bit, and as the economy had, in that the system probably doesn't look after you as well as it used to. So you can't leave school, step out and go and work somewhere and expect to work for that place all of your life and it will be fine and you'll retire when it's time to retire. But at the same time, the opportunities that exist, if you're ambitious and you want to change the world and you want to change things and you want to make things happen, have never been better. So I think it's tougher in that there's more impetus on all of us as individuals to make the best of ourselves than we can, and the system the system won't just take care of that for us. But if you have got that ambition and you have got that drive, I think there are more opportunities than there's ever been before.
Fantastic. So I'm now going to ask, and I'm going to mispronounce this, I think, unfortunately. Is it Hasty?
Yeah.
Sorry, did I say it right?
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. And what's really nice is our slightly older speakers can relax, because these are for Phoebe and Adiolu.
Are there any jobs that you don't think you have the right background and contacts to be able to do?
Phoebe?
I think that there are people out there that are going to have more contacts than me, and that is going to make me getting that job harder for me to do. But I'm not going to limit myself because people are more privileged than I am. I'm not going to let people tell me that because they know someone that they're going to get the job, because I'll work twice as hard as they will if I have to. And I think that if you have that attitude that if I work hard I will achieve, then nothing's going to hold you back. Not your background, not your gender, not your race, nothing.
Well, I think it's a brilliant answer.
Thank you.
Well, I believe that the managers and the leaders of today, they came from all different types of backgrounds, and so it really doesn't actually matter at all, because no one can tell you no. It's only you that tells yourself no, because like if you carry on in life in the right path, there's no one that can actually tell you no, because you can start a business yourself and easily get to where they are.
Again, another fantastic answer, so thank you very much, Adiolu. Is Stephen King here? There we are, Stephen King. And this is actually, says here, for Charles and Jamal, but if anybody else is desperate to chip in, of course they can.
When you first made your business, how did you keep it growing successfully instead of reaching a point where you thought that you could do no more with what you were doing?
That's a really good question, and I think it's because I love it. I love the business and the people and being part of the team and doing better together. And this is, I don't know how to say this and not sound an idiot really, but it's not the money that is the most important thing, actually. It's being part of it and creating the community and all of us and trying to keep proving to the world that what we do is good and we can grow and we can do better. And I do think there are quite a lot of people who start businesses, reach a point and say, well, that's enough money, that's now, I can pay off my mortgage, I can live okay now, fine, I've ticked the box and that's okay. That's not me.
Yeah, basically echo what Charles said. It's more of a passion thing first. So loads of people, I think, start businesses and they want to sing because they want to make lots of money, and I think that's the wrong kind of mind frame to go into setting up your own business. It should be more look at what's your passion and then do that and then try to figure out how to make money from that, because if it's your passion you'll continue on doing it.
Helena.
Well, I think the only thing I'd add is that I think what we're showing this morning is that although it's good to be ambitious, what ambitious is, what that means, is not saying, oh, I want to be number one here or I want to be that other person. You're kind of setting your own limits all the time. And I know I've always been ambitious through just kind of trying to do the best I could do and not really looking over my shoulder. And that's the same with the business. You just kind of keep it going because you're enjoying it and it's working. And that's exciting, and you're creating a community and good profits, and everyone's happy. But you don't want to cut it off until you've done more.
Callum Thomas. Here we are.
Do you think that successful people have an obligation to give back to society through charity?
Helena.
I think that lots of people who have achieved a lot in business do a lot with charity and are very mindful of the, not just the, I wouldn't like to use the word obligation, I think they actually want to do that. I'm chair of a few charities, and one is around gynecological cancers, obviously affecting women. And tonight there's another big event, and there's lots of things like that where I'm conscious that I could use maybe a bit of profile to help. So I feel that you want it to. I'm a great believer not to legislate or demand things of people, but actually to hope that people themselves realise that it's very important. And certainly the peers, across the industry, do all seem to do something that ignites their own interests and passion.
I think it's important because, for example, I film a lot of music, but I feel like, because I've got a large following of young people, I feel like doing sort of inspirational stuff is helping, giving stuff back to them. And people, I always say people always look at the success and the failures, but look at nothing in between. So if you're really successful, they'll either say, oh, you're part of Illuminati or some other kind of random excuse. So I try and film the really well-known people and try and focus on their setbacks and then ask them how they got above that setbacks to kind of inspire. So I think like giving back to your community is very important.
I rationalise it by saying I've been unbelievably lucky to get where I've got to, and it's really not, and I absolutely know it's not down to my skill. It's maybe a teeny bit, but mainly I've been incredibly lucky. If you accept that you've been incredibly lucky, then it's incumbent upon you to try and share your luck with other people and help other people to be lucky. And for me, it's as simple as that. And I don't think there can be very many people in the world who say, I've been successful and it was entirely down to me and not down to any luck or not down to anyone else. And if that's the case, then you have to try and spread your luck and help other people.
I mean, what I would say is it's not just about the people we perceive as successful. We're all part of a community and we've all benefited from being part of that community. And I just think we've all got a bit of an obligation, actually, whether we think of ourselves as superstars or just ordinary blokes and ordinary women, to try and give something back and try and help others. So I think it's not, I think you're absolutely, I think the advantage of being unbelievably successful and unbelievably wealthy is when you're giving something back, it can make quite a big difference. You can open a hospital wing, for example. Some people do that. But we can all make a contribution. I mean, Speakers for Schools is all about successful people, actually each of them making a little contribution, what we hope turns into something bigger for schools in general, which is they're all giving their time for free to come and talk to all of you, which is, I think, a fantastic thing, and I hope you think is a reasonably useful thing. We're at the end of our time. I am going to be a little bit self-indulgent and actually ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind. One is, we've got some people here who've been very successful in setting up businesses, and Helena has grown a business. Put your hand up when you think about the years ahead, you think trying to set up your own business is something that might be of interest to you. But I'd like to know which of you think that just put your hand up if you think creating a business might be interesting. Any of you? You don't have to speak about it. No, I'm not going to ask you questions about it. I'd just like to know, as I'm not going to ask you, just put your hands up. I'm just interested to know. So a few of you, okay? Yeah. What's that, about a tenth of you think that's a reasonable thing to do? I mean, that is a bit more than I would have expected a few years ago, which is, I think many people would think it's quite a good thing, because we need new businesses. And now I'm going to ask a slightly braver question, which is, if you think today has been useful and interesting, put your hands up, please.
Phew.
Thank goodness. I was a bit scared there. I'm not going to ask you to put your hand up if you think it's been a complete waste of time. But there will obviously be a few of you who didn't get as much out of it as others. Can I say, first of all, thank you to our fantastic panel who've given up their time, Adiolu, Phoebe, Charles, Jamal and Helena. And I can say thank you to all of you for your fantastic participation, some brilliant questions. And if I can ask you just to give our panel a round of applause. Thank you very much.